So thank you all for joining today. This is really, really exciting. John and I are so excited to be back. We've taken a couple of months off, given kind of everything, and for us to regroup and rethink about how we wanted to shape this meetup. As you all have known, if you've attended a meetup before, we've really valued the in-person connections and the networking. And so we wanted to be thoughtful about how we could continue to carry this on. But eventually the demand kind of kept building up, and we needed to figure out a way to get this back on the calendars. And so Grace actually from Asana really pushed us to go virtual with this. So we're really excited to be back. The amazing thing about this channel and doing it virtually is we've historically been limited to just San Francisco, and for people that have been able to make it right after work, and just being able to see where everybody's coming in from Texas and New York and Canada and Australia. So thank you all so much for joining this webinar. We're really, really excited to be able to share the learnings, the discussion, and just, the community of customer success with everybody here. So really excited to get started. Just as a quick introduction, John and I actually, we were just talking about this before the webinar, we actually normally skip the introduction. So we're kind of the people behind the webinar, but John, I'll actually let you go first and maybe do a brief introduction of your role, what you do, before we get started.
Yeah, so thanks, Janan. Folks who I haven't met before, my name's John Gleeson. I head up customer success at a company called KeepTruckin. And it's been an incredible journey over at KeepTruckin. I joined when we were about $1 million in ARR, and we're just shy of 100 million now. So learned everything in between. And I guess one of my favorite things in the whole world is learning from others who have done what I'm trying to do, and then trying my best to give back where I can to folks who are coming along in their journey in customer success. So when I moved out to San Francisco, I got plugged in with Janan, and the rest is history. And we've been growing this customer success meetup together ever since. So back to you, Janan.
All right. So my name is Janan. I think I've met a good number of all of you that have been dialing in and coming to the meetups over the years. But just for some history, been running this meetup for about 5 years now, and I still remember the first time we ever held this meetup. We had more pizzas than people show up, and so it's just been amazing to see the growth in customer success overall, but also the growth in this meetup. And I think we've benefited from the increased focus in customer success. And the explosion in SaaS and enterprise B2B. My role today is I'm over at Slack. I run one of our high touch enterprise customer success teams here at Slack. And I'm just really excited about customer success and really passionate about it. And like John said, one of the best things is the community. But I'll be completely honest, this meetup is also self-serving in that I get to, when we think about the topics, I get to bring up the topics that I struggle with and think about, and hopefully these are all valuable topics that everybody is thinking through as they run their businesses and work with their customers. So really excited to get into it. So quick housekeeping. For those that have not used Zoom before, this is Zoom webinar, so it's slightly different than what you've used in the past. So everybody is muted as part of this webinar. Looks like a lot of people have already taken part in the chat, so you can feel free to use the chat for group discussion. And then normally at the end of these meetups, we have audience Q&A. So we'll be using the audience Q&A or the Q&A function. So as you think of questions for the panel, please drop that into the Q&A function and that button there. We will, at the end of the panel, pull from the list of questions that are submitted, and that will form kind of our audience Q&A portion of the meetup. We obviously don't have a happy hour or the networking portion of the meetup. So what we did want to do is actually point you to some really great resources that are out in the community. And I'm sure that there are so many more that I haven't included on this slide, but just here are a few of these. And so Success Hacker has a great community and training programs. And then Gain, Grow, and Retain is a newly launched community for customer success. Really amazing content and discussion that's out there already. I would encourage you to join that as well. And then there's a Slack workspace. I couldn't resist to promote this being at Slack. So there's a Slack workspace for Customer Success Leadership Network. We will post the links to all three of these in the Zoom chat, so that way you can join these. One note is the Slack workspace has a 3-day expiration, so you'll want to join that in the next day or so before it expires. And one more, so before we get started into the content, John and I wanted to recognize and acknowledge what's going on right now in the world, and has really been going on for years, and the fact that things are not okay in the world. And so there's an incredible amount of injustice and pain, and at the same time, so much courage to push for change and change things for the better. And so it's important to recognize what we're talking about tonight is an industry, it's a career, it's a community, but at the end of the day, despite how much we're passionate about it, it's just a job, and it's nothing compared to life and death. And it's nothing compared to living your life in fear, or what it's like to be judged by the color of your skin every single day. And so I share this, and I say this not to diminish what we're about to talk about this evening, but I want to share that to put it in perspective, because there are much bigger things that are happening out in the world. With that being said, I think there are some small things that we can all do to dismantle systemic racism that exists within our working world, including, customer success. And so it's our duty, all of us, to educate ourselves, to be intentional about what we do and what we say. And this meetup's goal is about connection, learning, and career growth. We've discussed diversity in the past at this meetup and talked about how we fared somewhat better than other areas of tech, but I mean, if we're being completely honest, we haven't done enough. We don't have enough Black colleagues. We don't have enough Black CS leaders. And at this meetup, we haven't had enough Black panelists. And so John and I want to commit that we want to change this for the future, but we don't have all the answers. And this is much bigger than just this meetup, but I do want to invite us to have a discussion and a conversation about this. So if you've got ideas about how we can be more intentional to address systemic racism, promote diversity within customer success and this meetup, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from the community, because this community is really what makes customer success so amazing. It's the tight-knit community and the sharing and the bond that we have. It's why I'm passionate about customer success, and it's why we do this, month after month is the community. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mark Arnoldi. He's the head of customer success at Asana, to welcome you to this evening's content. Asana is the sponsor and the host of this evening, and this event wouldn't be possible without them. So big thank you to Asana for hosting.
Great. Well, thank you, Junan and John. I really appreciate it. And Junan, I think that was extremely well said. I want to appreciate both of you for building this community and pushing us to be better. Those are both really important things that you've done here. And, for me, I think this is a moment in time that certainly highlights the work we have left to do, but also our shared vulnerability. And I find hope in the reality that it's revealed our profound and natural sympathy for one another as well. And so I wanted to kick off by saying, I personally find a lot of energy being part of the CS team in moments like this, as I think our teams are defined by empathy and a service orientation. And I really believe that we can tap into some collective strengths as we all aim to be extra special for our customers, for our family members, for our friends and colleagues who are affected by the issues in the world right now. So thank you again for your words, for bringing us together. And as we get ready to transition over the panel, I just want to say a few words as the virtual host today. First and foremost, we committed to do this when we still lived in a world where people would be able to come into our office. And I want to commit right now to say, we will bring you to our office someday. By the time we're able to do that, we might have a totally new office, but we're going to have a great culinary program nonetheless. And we're looking forward to bringing you to the Asana office and having some great food and being able to meet each other in person in the future. A little bit about Asana before I pass it over to John. Our mission is to help humanity thrive by enabling the world's teams to work together effortlessly. We're a work management platform that helps teams orchestrate their work from daily tasks all the way up to strategic initiatives. We have millions of customers across 195 countries and more than 75,000 pretty incredible paying customers, some of which are represented in this panelist group. So thank you for those of you that are customers. And in terms of our CS team, we're a really dynamic, fast-growing team. So we have about 50 people in seat today, but growing quickly. And our largest office is in San Francisco, second largest in Dublin, third largest in New York. But we also have CS team members in Sydney, Tokyo, London, and Munich. So one thing I have to say in playing host is we are hiring. You see the jobs link there, and we are hiring everything from training specialists, onboarding consultants, CSMs, managers, even a couple leadership roles. So we're in a very fortunate position to be able to say that right now. And if you are looking for a role, we'd be really excited to receive your application and talk to you about what we have open and available. Lastly, I just want to say we are very excited that we can offer out some swag and some free Asana use tonight. So if you stay until the end, you complete the survey. We've got some great swag gifts that we're gonna send out to folks who complete the survey through a raffle. And we also have an offer from our finance team that we put together for this. If you are new to Asana and never used Asana, we can get you 2 months free after you complete the survey at the end of today's event. So most of all, thank you for being here. I'm going to pass it over to John so he can introduce our incredible panelists for this evening.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark. Game on. Let's get things going here. We've got an incredible panel tonight, and we burdened them with actually a fairly large topic. There's never been more pressure as us people, supporting software right now. Finance teams are looking at their budgets very, very closely, and people are really, diving in. Is this a nice to have? Is this a need to have? So tonight, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about how to drive return on investment in times of uncertainty. And there's certainly a lot of that right now. And we've got an incredible panel. So let me introduce to you 3 folks who are actually personal friends. So it's great to kind of link folks from Canada, folks from New York, and of course, folks from San Francisco on this call. So first up, I will introduce my friend, Chad Hornfeld. Chad's the Director of Customer Success at a great company called Kustomer. He's been around this thing called customer success for a long time, over 15 years experience, building teams at all sorts of great companies, from Kustomer, where he's currently at, to Bluecore, Influitive, Oracle, which was acquired by Eloqua. And he's also somebody, if you're watching the forums, he's always quick to post and always has great comments. So everybody, welcome Chad. And if we were in person, we would all clap. But in your bedrooms or wherever you are, make sure you had some claps and some snaps. Next up, another personal friend of mine, all the way from Toronto, actually, where I'm originally from, Jocelyn Brown. Jocelyn is currently leading all revenue functions at a great company called Allocadia. She is also part of that Oracle Eloqua crew that brought that entire product and company through to that acquisition by Oracle, and did some great work both before and after, touching account management through to customer success, and even getting them ready for some of their new markets. So an incredible wealth of knowledge, and super grateful to also have Jocelyn Brown on the line today. So clap, snaps, here we go. All right, and last but not least, we have Christina Valencoff on the call. She is VP of Customer Success at another great company called Brandcast. Prior to Brandcast, she was the head of CS at Carta. Anybody with options, definitely very, very familiar with Carta. And again, an absolute seasoned vet in the customer success world, over 15 years experience, leading everything from CSMs through to technical support, and certainly like the whole scaling process in hyper growth. So incredible resource. So snaps, claps, shout outs. Thanks for joining us tonight, Kristina. Awesome. All right. So now I'm actually going to hand it over to the panelists. So before we get into talking about the main subject, I think it's really, really important when you're getting advice, when you're, talking to other customer success leaders, to understand where they're coming from and to understand what their companies look like, what stage of growth they're at, and what that customer base looks like. Because no two customer success teams are the same. No two customer-facing companies are the same. So it's really good to know the context. And I'm going to start in the middle. Jocelyn, I'm going to get you to go first, and rock, paper, scissors for who's next after that. But you're in the hot seat.
Sure. Thanks, John. It's a good point to actually start with the context from where we come, because it does make a big difference in how you organize yourself and how you show value. My customer success career really has been in higher touch enterprise. I've done some work in the scaling, but predominantly my experience is in high touch. The company I work at now, Allocadia, as John said, I run actually sales all the way through customer success and account management. We are enterprise software, B2B, largely B2B companies, but also some B2C. And we're dealing primarily in the high touch, though I do have a small part of my business that's more at the scaled option. But most of my perspective will come from the medium to high touch perspective. When Chad and I worked together, we sort of split the world a little bit. I did more of the high touch and he did sort of more of our mid-market organization. So in fact, I got kicked out of the SMB segment at one point because I would talk to them about things that just were way too big because I had no perspective. I've learned since then, but yeah, most of my perspectives really on that high enterprise, high touch.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Chad, Kristina, rock, paper, scissors to see who goes next. I'm serious about this. Ready? Rock, paper, scissors. We got rock, beats, scissors. All right, Chad, you're in the hot seat. Oh.
Chad, you're muted, man.
Kristina, while he figures that out, you win by default. Over to you.
All right, I'm going to jump in before he unmutes himself. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm Christina Valencoff. I'm currently VP of Customer Success for a company called Brandcast. I am on my third week, so I was one of their, the only kind of fully remote COVID hire that they made just in the last few weeks. So I feel very fortunate about that. Prior to joining Brandcast, as mentioned, I was head of CS for Carta. So if we kind of get into topics where I haven't quite gotten my arms around it or don't know the answer for my current company, I will certainly revert to Carta. But spent the last 15 or so years, as John mentioned, indexing pretty heavily, similar to Jocelyn. The bulk of the early part of my career was mostly in the enterprise space. So I did implementations for several years, moved over into account management. I was lucky enough to join a startup pretty early that IPO'd 7 years later. So experienced that ride and got to do a variety of things there. So at Carta, many of you are familiar. We had a customer base of about 15,000. When I joined, we were at about 50 million revenue, closer to about 100 when I left. So kind of the full breadth of experience there in terms of lots of enterprise companies and lots of sort of two founders in a garage. So really had to kind of understand how to organize the CS team there to kind of straddle both worlds. At Brandcast, we're really pushing up and about to close some really big enterprise deals. So certainly can speak to both and have done both, but have also lots of experience on the implementation and leading technical support teams as well.
Cool. Well, thanks, Kristina. And Chad, game on.
Right. Can you guys hear me now? All right, perfect. Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me here. It's awesome to be on the San Francisco Customer Success Meetup. In terms of my background, so what John was saying in terms of being a student of customer success, being in this world of customer success for a while, it's been really interesting for me to almost grow up working in a SaaS world. It was just, Jocelyn and I were really lucky, I think, just to have joined that world really early and joined a company like Eloqua that knew that if we treated our customers well, they would tell others. And that's one of the key reasons why we grew. We had really great leadership from the CEO down. And I was really lucky where I found a company like Kustomer because I'm so customer obsessed. I mean, how can I not join a company that's named Kustomer? So in terms of my role, it's a really interesting company. So Kustomer is a CRM platform that's really very specific to the customer service industry. So in terms of some of our customers, we have a wide variety of different customers. Most of them, I would say, are more direct to consumer. And so we compete with Zendesk and Service Cloud. And really what we're trying to do is just disrupt the industry. And we're accomplishing that. We've gone to market, this is our third year. So we've grown immensely, and we have customers that are tiny. We have customers that are massive. And from my role and what I'm trying to do there is, I would say, similar to Eloqua in some ways, where we're a platform, we're not just an add-on. And I think that's, we've been able to weather this COVID storm fairly well, I would say, although it's difficult. But you're not just going to throw out your customer service platform, because your customers, at this point, that's going to be one of your differentiators. In terms of our team and how we're structured, so my team's about 10 people, growing rapidly. We just bought a company as well in AI. And we have our customer support team, we have our professional services team, and then we have our customer success team. We all roll up to the CRO.
Awesome, thanks, Chad. So there you have it, folks. So this panel, the information that you're going to be getting, there's certainly a little bit of an enterprise skew to it. Jocelyn, you're good enough to say that that's not an area that you particularly love. Chad, you're saying dabbled in it a little bit more than you.
It's not that I don't love it. I just can't share expertise in it.
I can take the lead there. I've had several years in kind of figuring out tech touch and really kind of getting my arms around the SMB space. It is a very different world, Jocelyn. So took me a while to figure that out.
Yeah, so there you have it. We've got our bases covered, so we can go high, we can go low, we can hit in the middle, and so we'll try and touch on all of that, because I know there's folks on the line catering to all types of customer segments. But let's cut to the chase here. This COVID thing, I think, hit like a ton of bricks, and when I'm talking to different customer success leaders, I'm finding that for some folks, they've got great tailwinds, their business is doing well. For others, their customers are really, really impacted, and it's forcing their customers to make some hard decisions. And so let's talk about that. How have your customers responded? What's been the impact? How are they coping?
I mean, are we gonna rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
First,
I can start.
Go for it, Jocelyn.
Yeah, I mean, I feel extremely lucky. My software platform actually serves marketers around budgeting and planning, and the COVID crisis made us very important immediately. So there was an intensity around the panic. They needed to figure out where their money was. They needed to cancel events. They needed to understand the impact of it. And as we come out of this, that pace of changing and planning and stuff like that hasn't changed. So actually, in a strange way, our core value proposition got really strengthened. It got tested very immediately, and then got strengthened, and we certainly have some impact there. Now that's for those who are healthy. I certainly have. I don't serve the travel industry very much, but I do have a handful of customers in the travel industry, and that was an immediate down to zero kind of an event, and retail as well. So I had a number of customers where, one day we would talk to them, and the next day the entire team would be furloughed. So in the early days, I think the first month was just trying to figure out whether people had the capacity to accept help, whether we could help them in any way. So we moved very quickly to get resources and office hours and all of the things that we could do to touch base with everyone. And for those that were in financial constraint, one of the main things I was trying to do is give my account management organization very clear things that they could do, concessions that they never had to come and ask me. Just if your customer's in pain, in this kind of pain, here are the things that you can do for them immediately. So a lot of it was getting my team prepared to show up in whatever way the customer needed them to. We were fortunate that it was a small subsegment of our customer base that was really overtly impacted. But then on the, to your point about everything's under pressure, now everything is under scrutiny. So certainly sharpening our saw around our value proposition, around our ROI calculators, around our ability to articulate value. Every single renewal is going to the CFO's desk. So we are having to, again, just sharpen our explanation of value, bring the story to bear, go up the organization, all those kinds of things. So it's varied impact on my actual customer base. So a lot of the effort was getting my team prepared to show up in the way that they needed to in the moment that they were in.
Right. Now, Kristina, you got hired during COVID. So coming in and learning a customer base during this, like what's that been like, and how are your customers impacted?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I worked from home for many years, but that was many years ago. And so getting to know the team that I've inherited, doing everything virtually is a bit challenging, I won't lie. But, I think I've become a bit more accustomed to it. And, as things slowly open up, we'll look to find ways that everybody is comfortable with to potentially get together outside, social distance, all of that. But it's been an interesting experience, and I can speak to Brandcast and the impact there specifically. Our platform actually is relatively conducive to folks sort of being stuck at home and having to create lots and lots of virtual content. So essentially our product is a code-free website building platform. So if you want to create really beautiful, responsive, easily updatable content, ditch your PDFs and your PowerPoints, you can create it on our platform. So it's become, and we've really made some great headway in the sales enablement space. If you can imagine building your proposals on a website rather than putting together a deck and putting together PowerPoint collateral. So I think we've really gained some traction, but I will say early on, similar to what Jocelyn was kind of alluding to, I think everybody sort of kind of full stopped in sales cycles and just wanted to take a beat and see what was going to shake out. So we had a lot of deals that were sort of very early or midstream that just kind of people hit the pause button on. We're picking those conversations back up pretty actively now, which is great since we're starting to sort of open up again. But certainly impact. At Carta, it was very similar. We had lots of customers in the restaurant and hospitality space, and similar stories. Some of them, here one day, gone the next. So it's been a roller coaster for sure. But I think, I'm fortunate enough to have been hired in this market, and also to be working at a company that I think can really deliver value, especially during this time.
Gotcha. Cool. And now, Chad, your customer base is a little bit different, right? Because, you might be dealing with retail, direct to consumer spending. What's it been like on your side?
It's been really interesting. It's like all over the place, where you have some companies that are really struggling. A company that's in the recruiting space, let's say, versus a company like nuts.com that's selling nuts, and people are like buying tons of nuts because they're at home. So it's really crazy. Like, it was in some ways very hard to assess like what company was going to do well versus what company was going to struggle. But what I did is I took the top, I think the top 40 or 50% of our accounts in terms of revenue, and said, okay, let's do a green, yellow, red very quickly and assess that and provide that up to the exact level and to the board, just so that we have an idea of like what the revenue risk is. And this is funny. I mean, I'm going to be very honest. I panicked. I was in San Francisco, I think it was like around March 11th, March 12th. And I was in the city, seeing what's happening, seeing how bare it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be just horrible for tech. And then I remember flying home, and I was like sending emails. I said to our executive team, like, I need to meet with everybody like right away. We have to come up with a strategy. How are we going to tackle this? And, we have a great executive team where we actually met on a regular basis and just discussed what was coming at customer success, so that we can actually come up with what our strategy would be to work with these customers. And I was so impressed. I mean, from our CFO to our CEO, I think it took customer success, which, just so everyone's aware, my team is 10, but I've hired 5 people in the last 3 months. 5 of those people have never even come to our HQ in New York. So we were actually like building this team, and I joined in late December. So it's been like a build. And so then COVID hits. I'm like, what the heck is this? I've never seen anything like this. And it's just been really, I'm really proud of our company and how we've worked through this, because I think what we're doing is we're not just creating customers and thinking about the renewal date. We're thinking about customers for life and how we're going to build those long-term relationships. And yeah, it's been horrible. I'm going to be very honest. I'm sure many CS leaders are probably saying that. I think right now I'm starting to come out of it and think about strategy. But at one point it was like going through a list and negotiating with clients over certain things. And I just felt like everyone was just like, well, it's COVID, so I want this. And I was like, okay, well, I can tell you this. I can go to our software providers and ask for, like, people have left our company and they're not giving us any seats or anything like that. They're not giving us any credits or anything like that. So yeah, it's tough. But again, we have a very good product. And I think that what it did, especially with the new people that joined, is that we learned really quickly what mattered to customers. Yeah. And a lot of it was about building efficiency, looking at the reporting. We started creating new services that we could provide to customers, like health checks and things like that. So it spurred a lot of innovation, and I need a vacation. I think that's my
John, if you don't mind, I just want to add one final kind of data point that I think is pretty relevant for most folks here. I was in a board meeting last week, and one of our senior board members mentioned that his VC had just done an interview with, I think it was a couple hundred CFOs about COVID and their response and their outlook. And what he said was that overwhelmingly, almost every single one of them said that their CEO has come to them, impacted or not, right? Industry impacted or not, and said, we don't know what the future holds. So we need you to sort of actively look at from a line item perspective and see where we can kind of shrink our budgets. Yep. And so even for organizations that haven't been directly impacted, I think there's an impact that we're all going to feel in some sense come renewal time for lots of our customers. So yeah, to Chad's point, I think this has been a real opportunity for those of us in CS to figure out what's truly important to our customers and how can we deliver value with every single interaction.
Yep.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'm actually happy that you segued to that, because I think there's nobody that's escaped from this like unimpacted in some ways. And each of you sit at the executive level. And so what have been some other like just high level strategies? Like how have you been thinking about it? Have you gone through like reforecasts? Have you thought about, hiring tools? Like what does it look like at the executive level when it comes to discussing and planning a future here?
Yeah, I think for me, and again, I'm pretty early at my current organization, but headcount is going, headcount exercises are always a little bit tough. I think right now and for the foreseeable future, they're going to become even more challenging. So really having to prove the value for every single resource you're looking to bring on board, really trying to create leverage and doing a whole lot more with less. And I think that's going to be the environment in some form or fashion that we are all in, at least for the foreseeable couple of quarters. So from a headcount perspective, there's been some impact. From a tooling perspective, we've slowed down the idea of bringing in new tools, and we're doing some real evaluations of our existing tools. So I think, again, it all comes back to creating leverage where we can, keeping the team motivated, and really figuring out how can we continue to deliver value, report accurately. And, I'm probably forecasting more now than I ever have in my life, just because the one thing that I think we can try to do is get in front of this and provide some visibility and think of new and creative ways to forecast risk. So those are just a couple of the things that I'm working on.
Yeah, I would say predictability is gone, right? So as much of planning and otherwise that you want to do, it's a little bit tougher, because you can't, the way you would make a business case before would be to use sort of past performance to forecast and then build plans around it, so that the concept of hiring ahead of things and stuff like that, and all that's really on pause because you just don't have that level of predictability anymore. So I run 2 forecasts essentially. I run sort of what I would do if it was normal course of business, and then I've applied kind of a COVID factor against things. So I've assessed everybody's business and rated it sort of healthy, neutral, or negative. And some of that's just me eyeballing it. Some of it's we actually ask customers. So we have just like a 2-3 question, I think. It's sort of like, has COVID impacted you? Is Allocadia more or less useful to you in this moment? And I can't remember what the third one is. So that I just apply a factor, kind of like the stages in Salesforce against that. So as I renew things, it gets more clear and more secure, but I'm essentially running 2 forecasts simultaneously. And then, and kind of looking to the negative one as that's for sure. And then the positive outcome gives me a little bit of ability to move ahead. I also, were renewing way early. So we went to literally everybody that we thought was in a position to renew early with us, that was in a good position with us, and got way, way ahead. So, we're renewing people 3 and 4 months ahead of schedule, and certainly asking for more where we can, and those that are growing, doing early renewals and longer ones. So in the most stable parts of our business, we're going and proactively asking them if they, because if a customer values you and wants to partner with you, more often than not, they're going to say yes, because they want to secure their budget as well. And if their business is healthy and your partnership is healthy, they're going to do it. And that gives me a baseline to then be able to make plans. So my goal really is to be able to say to the board, to my executive team, I can tell you here through whatever period of time what's guaranteed, because I've kind of gone ahead and done it. And that starts building my case to be able to get a little bit back on my forward foot for hiring, because agreed, Kristina, the hiring's not going to speed up anytime soon for me. It's not that it's closed, but it's less predictable. And then the other piece of the equation for me is I was already planning to do a segmentation project, and it just got escalated. Like it became immediate. So while it was something that I was gearing up to do, redo my journey map, redo a segmentation project, it became immediate, so that I can make the right investments to scale with the resources I have today, but also building forward. And that's brought an amazing clarity and visibility to the entire organization of what really matters. So we got that clarity of what really matters to our customers, and we're getting that clarity internally of really, where does our lifetime value come from? How do those investments pay out? So where we invest, how does that actually pay out in cash flow, in predictability, in lifetime value, and all the kind of things that are meaningful for a predictable business. So yeah, it sort of accelerated a couple projects I already wanted to do, which is great. But the visibility, to Chad's point, like we meet at a level of detail on those things that I think things just kind of trusted it was happening, and now everybody is curious. And it's not with malice intent. It's not to like spy on us. It's true curiosity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Everything that you said really rung true for me. I want to keep things a little bit high for a second when it comes to tactics, and then we're going to go down to the actual CSM level, because we've got a lot of CSMs. But before we do, Jocelyn, you mentioned some really good tactics. You talked about multi-year renewals, key early renewals. These are 2 things that we've done in our business to, lock in people who are having a great experience and are stable. That creates some predictability to your board, which is incredibly important right now. But what are some other, tactics around that? What about customers on the other end of the spectrum? Customers who, hey, I'm falling on hard times. I might not be able to pay my bill this month. What are some tactics that you've either seen in your own business deployed, or are thinking about, or have heard from others?
Yeah, so we quickly moved to have sort of a concession matrix that we could just give to the account managers, so they didn't have to go back to finance. So we sat down with finance and sort of said, from what's most impactful to us, what's most impactful to the customer, and kind of what hurts us and what hurts them, and just empowered the field that in the moment that you're having this conversation where somebody is struggling, here are your options. and they're in a sort of descending order of what hurts us in terms of potential cash flow issues or otherwise. And that
maybe
alone.
What is that? Like, what's that order of operations? Like, in my gut, it's probably like freeze accounts before cancellation.
Totally. So, offering a discount midterm, splitting up payments, extending a term beyond until a later date, giving more licenses without asking for payment now. We did some integration work, sort of ahead of a contract, so 6 months against that, if it was going to create efficiencies for them. So there's probably a bucket of solution concessions where it's like, here's something that we know is going to help you and we're just going to do it, and we'll figure out payment later because it's important to you and it's going to help you, to financial ones. And certainly there are some scenarios where we're letting people out of contracts if that's, if it just makes sense, if their business is not in a position to be there. I think payment terms for a lot of people is helpful, right? So extending some different invoicing options, extending some flexibility around there. For somebody who finds real value in your tool and it's really truly that they have a mandate from their CFO or some other constraint, for a frontline person to just be able to offer that because they already know they have approval is pretty powerful, and that's going to create a partnership in there for them to do it. So really being very clear about what they can offer on the spot, having it pre-approved by the CFO so it doesn't run into any problems as it's being processed, just meant that it was frictionless. So, because it's hard, some people are asking us for something they don't want to be asking us for, right? They value our service and they're having to come back and say, I can't spend more than X. And so you've got to figure out how to fit their value into X that they can do there. So, it was discounting, deferred payments, extended terms, and then we had a host of solution kind of things that we did that we, hope to charge them for next year or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think just quickly, John, sorry, I know you didn't ask me, but I think that the commercials that Jocelyn, the commercial sort of modifications and negotiations that Jocelyn alluded to, I think are fantastic to really enable the team to not have to go an extensive approval process. Something that I'm thinking of doing kind of on the other side of that to also offer some value outside of the actual payment terms and in contract is kind of free office hours. So I have a PS organization. We charge some number of dollars per hour or flat fee. And so looking to roll out a program where if your company has been impacted, or even if it hasn't, and you've lost some folks that were, using our platform, or your super users or champion, like let's open it up, allow you to come in, you can get free training. We'll create some of these templates for you, whatever it is that you need. I think it's a good time to try to get creative and figure out other ways that you can add some value there as well.
Yeah, just to jump in, like beyond the contractual stuff, which I'm going through exactly what Jocelyn and Kristina went through, and doing all sorts of fun things to really try and help the customer through the situation. We've done other things too. Like we started a community for our customers because, as we know, like the customers cannot meet up together and we can't meet with them. And so we wanted to do something that, it's not for us, it's not a support community. It's really for them to connect with each other and ask each other questions. So that was something that we did. The other thing that we did is we use something called Canny, which is where customers can submit feature requests. And our CEO is actually like, he is an engineer. And so he actually worked on the top voted feature, which is our customers want a dark mode. So we have agents who are customer service agents using our system, and they want a dark mode. And it was such a great win because here's something that all of these agents now, they're working from home. They're trying to get their job done. They've got all the other stresses that many of us have, and they're trying to create great experiences for their customers. And so we gave them like a nice present where, here's this dark mode. So we did those things. We also gave a top tier part of our product as a temporary thing for some of our customers to leverage. That was kind of early on when we were like, oh, this COVID thing, what is this? And then it went to like much different measures. And the other thing that we're doing, it's so, I don't know if you're finding this, Jocelyn or Kristina, it's like a yo-yo where I feel like we're starting to come out of this COVID And our customers are struggling now because they laid off a lot of people, and now they're trying to make the case to bring these people back. So we're doing a lot of analysis for our customers and showing them like, hey, like this is what's happening. Your customers are submitting requests at these hours. Like we're doing analysis for them and actually helping them to make business cases for their executive team. So it's like trying to fill that success gap. And you know, I'm really lucky because we've hired really smart people on our team that are just coming in with different approaches, and we're experimenting and seeing what's working, and then just taking those and it's like, oh, that was good. Let's do that over here, and trying to build repeatable playbooks.
Yeah, I love that, Chad. Yeah, we've all hired really smart people, and you know, we talk about the decisions at the higher levels of the company, but at the end of the day, the folks on the front line, this is super challenging. And you know, Kristina, you mentioned it. You know, we're looking into budgets, and in some cases that's meant, you know, companies had to lay off people. In other cases, that means looking into your tool budget and making sure that, you know, things are locked in there. And usually, like, those are two of the biggest levers that you have in making your team successful. Like, hey, we can increase headcount so you can do more, or we can bring on a new tool so that you can be more efficient with your time. We're doing neither of these things, and the poor folks on the front line are saying, holy smokes, I'm having the hardest conversations I've ever had before. So, like, what are you doing to make them successful? How are you helping them get through this? What do their playbooks look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think if there is a sort of shining point to all of this, it's that I think those folks that are customer facing have really stood out and really started to shine in their ability to get creative and be lean and be resourceful and come together. One of the cool things that Brandcast has been doing is we have sort of 1 or 2 weekly touch points as a company where, you know, it's not executive led, it's for the employees to sort of share ideas, and they've come up with some really creative ways to be helpful to our customers, but also to sort of strengthen the internal community. And I think it's really critical for those in leadership positions to be understanding. You know, we're not going to be getting 100% of everybody right now. It's just not the way that things are. So be understanding, be supportive, enable your team with as much as you can. And, you know, for me, that's a lot of sort of coaching and mentorship and coming in and really trying to not just get my arms around the org and, you know, ultimately make some pretty significant changes, but just kind of meet people where they are today and understand that it's going to be a bit of a challenge for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the things is standing shoulder to shoulder with them. So I would say there are more executives in more customer engagements right now, because that's part of what we can offer, right? Is to stand shoulder to shoulder with them, to hear directly from the customers, to provide whatever air cover that they need. So one of the things is certainly our whole executive team is participating in customer related, whether it be business reviews or difficult conversations or saves or whatever it is. There's certainly a much higher level of standing shoulder to shoulder with the CSM in the tough environment. So they're not alone, that's for sure. And then we likewise have we've made some easier or just more obvious ways to collaborate. So there's just some, you can very quickly get sort of a rapid response team together. So depending on what the scenario is, there's no friction to getting whatever resource it is you need available to you, and sort of defining what are the resources that are available and surrounding whatever that CSM with whatever help it is they need. And it's just, I mean, I'm not sure there was ever much friction before, but people were busy, so they wouldn't do it. And now they're immediately signing up to say, what can I do? So it's led to some good ways for us to collaborate cross-functionally in support of a customer, and certainly more executives directly engaged so that CSMs are not on their own.
Right. Yeah. You know, I want to ask too, though, you know, how have you seen your CSM's skill set evolve? You know, different times call for different needs, and what have been some changes in the skills that are now really important, but maybe previously you might not have over-indexed on?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
still too
go
early.
for it, Chad.
Yeah, I think I'm still too early in terms of like changing who we're hiring for, but I would say that, I mean, one thing that I did, like, we hire more senior people. We have a very technical product, so hiring a junior CSM, it won't work. And I was fairly quickly, I learned what we were hiring for. And I think one of the things that I did take advantage of is that I can hire someone remote, because I've onboarded the last 5 CSMs completely remote. So I think that that's a big change. And in fact, I hired someone who was at our competitor. It was a great hire, really talented person, and who's in the Bay Area. And I think that this whole COVID crisis made this easier from the company to digest, because we're out of New York and we're very New York focused. So I think it was more of a geographical and seniority. And actually 3 of the last 5 CSMs all have MBAs, which is a weird stat, but it's just a reality as well, where we're looking for more of that business acumen.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Mostly we support a business process and it just requires that. And we're kind of an emerging market. I would say specifically in the time, within the sort of competencies I already have sort of set up for CSMs, that diagnostic skill, that ability to hear, to synthesize, and to quickly pivot to what needs to be done has been more critical, because playbooks, as helpful as they are, were sort of irrelevant in the time. So you really did need people with critical thinking skills that could hear what a customer was saying and pivot or adjust quickly. So that diagnostic skill, I think, when it's hard to test for, but it's certainly been critical. And then I actually have been investing a fair bit in their domain expertise, largely because people are so desperate for advice, because they've now maybe have less staff, or because they've had to pivot or change so much quickly. I'm lucky to have a resource, a VP of Market Insight, who really leads our best practices and research arm. And I've deployed him very heavily in the customer base and with the CSMs, so that they can be leading the conversations rather than responding. So they really, it's not just, proactive is the word you always use, but they literally have to lead the subject matter expertise on a brand new subject, on what happened in March. So they now have to be experts in something that happened in March. So that I think we invested in sort of that solution expertise pretty quickly. Lots of collaboration, lots of office hours with ProServe and sort of collaborations to ask questions. But I'd invested a little bit more in the subject matter expertise and the diagnostics.
Yeah, I'll just add, and I know we're at time, John, I think it's more critical than ever. We talk a lot about outcomes in CS, and I think we have a long way to go as an industry in really figuring out what that means. And so in terms of my team, we do sort of onboarding, CS, and support, really nailing that onboarding and having a mutual success plan, understanding truly what, not just here's a feature and function of our product, here's how you, customer, become successful with our product. And without that understanding, I think we're missing the boat. And I think nailing onboarding now is more critical than ever. It's always been one of the most critical things, but I think now even more so.
Well, we've done re-onboarding as a result as well, and re-established.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we've had several customers that, Chad, it sounds like you did it, that the best thing for us to do was just to redo it.
Yeah. We've done that too. It's just part of like how we've negotiated to get them out of COVID. Yeah, anything like you're just trying different strategies. And
well, customers actually are really open to be led right now. And so some of the friction you had where they really showed up going, it has to be this way. They're like, yeah, maybe I didn't really know. So can you lead me? And again, if we're ready to show up and do that, re-onboarding has been not a massive thing, but it's been important in some scenarios, and reestablishing outcomes, to your point, Kristina, like resetting the goalposts.
Yeah, I just think it's such a critical piece. And I think sometimes in CS, we get hung up on training on the product and features and functionality rather than sort of taking a step back and really trying to understand. And I know we can't all do that with every SMB customer, right? But where we can, really trying to understand what does being successful with my product look like for you, and forget about kind of focusing in on features and functionality. And for those of you that are interested in, a good friend of mine wrote an article on this sort of ROI in COVID and beyond. Chris Hicken, he's the CEO of a company called Just Enough. I would totally recommend you go check it out. It is very, very helpful advice, very tactical, and he's a rock star in the industry.
Yeah, I love what all of you guys are saying. That discovery and understanding the needs of their business, play 20 questions, understand what's really going on, and then making sure that then you can deliver on that, whether it's through extra onboarding support, an extra ear. I just love that. So we're gonna pass it over to actually the hardest questions that you guys are gonna get all night in a second, which is from the audience. But before we do that, any closing last remarks, or one thing that you think is really important to leave the audience with? Kristina, I'll start with you. I'll put you in the hot seat here.
Oh my goodness, I was hoping to go after these two to steal from them, but I think the reality is, when this first started, I was very resistant to it. It's not that I wasn't taking it seriously. I didn't set up my workstation at home because I thought, nope, we're going to get back to it, right? And I was working on the couch, on the coffee table, and 2 months in, I finally thought, all right, this is ridiculous. It's very clear that this is going to be sort of a longer term challenge. So I think just accepting that things have changed. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative, right? Lots of companies are now saying, let's go fully remote for forever. This works, right? And it certainly can. So I think trying to find the positive, trying, to share some of that with your teams is super critical. This is it's hard times, right? If it wasn't just COVID, now it's everything else crazy going on in the world. So I think I'm working on being a little bit more patient with myself, and understanding that it's going to be tough. And, what can I do as a leader in CS to really make sure that not just my team is taken care of, but that we're doing everything we can and going above and beyond for all of our customers, and, trying things that we've not tried before. And it's okay if you try something and it falls on its face, right? We all have experienced that. But being willing to sort of try new and different things right now, I think, is also really important.
Great. Chad.
Sure. I think a couple of things. Like, one is, first of all, I'm really blessed that I'm working and have a job. And I know that a lot of people have been really hit hard by this. And I think that because of that, I try and temper our team and get them to think, okay, like, this is the reality. So one of our values at Customers being scrappy with a K. And so look at your tools that you have, look at the people that you have, and try and do things that are differently, they're different. So, one of the things, like, customer success wasn't a really big thing at Customers, just, it didn't exist. So let's take the stories that our customers are bringing to us, that we're learning from our customers, and let's create a Slack channel and let's broadcast those stories so that more people in the company hear about those things. Let's bring those stories to town hall. So that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is, I'm already thinking about 2021. Like, I see where our customers going. We just bought a company, we're selling that product. Like, we're really starting to come out of this. And, if I don't get the resources I want now, then I'm going to do like a time and motion study and really gauge where we're spending our time today, and look at how I continue to make that case to make those investments. I'm going to survey our customers and get more information from them, and just do all those things so that the company is aware. It's like, okay, I can't invest now, but I hear you. Stop annoying me, and I will get you those resources, and just keep pushing.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say to anybody who's in customer success, there's no better department to be in right now than customer success, because customers are the lifeblood of the company. You are the person that's closest to it. You are actually working for the boss directly. Customers pay our salaries. So embrace it. You have the best information in the company. You know the most about what matters, and that is your superpower. in a time of stress, is that you actually have, I mean, my CSMs have better information than I do, for sure. Answers are in the field. You have the best seat in the house. And as hard as it is, it's the best place to be sitting right now.
Yeah. So let's break over to some questions. I just clicked, I've never done a broadcast like this before. So I just clicked answer live. Is everybody able to see the question, or should I read it out?
Read it out, John.
Read it out. All right. So this is from our friend, Irene, who also actually runs a great customer success meetup down in the lower part of the peninsula. So we're up in San Francisco. She's down closer to San Jose, I believe. But here's the question. There are obviously lots of challenges in how we work. Remote, blend, less travel, and in-person, some teams growing, some teams contracting, lots of different things. Layer on top of COVID and the economic situation, what has recently surfaced to remind us that we need a stronger focus on diversity on our boards and in specific ways. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about what you are thinking about, what changed, what you might do differently, how you might change your hiring strategies, or kind of address some of the serious diversity questions that we're being asked of ourselves right now.
Yeah, I can start. I feel extremely fortunate that Brandcast is a relatively small company still, but we have an employee-led diversity and inclusion committee. And everybody takes it seriously. We meet regularly, and it's an important part of the fabric of our culture. And I think if most companies didn't already have some version of that, I suspect that we will start to see that take effect here and take hold and become even more at the forefront of everything that we do in terms of recruiting and hiring. So, I'm looking at hopefully bringing on at least a couple of folks, and I'll certainly be working with our HR team to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to continue that dialogue and make sure that we're upholding everything that we talk about internally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, at Kustomer, it's a top level goal in terms of diversity and in terms of hiring. And I think that, doing these types of meetups, I really enjoy. I mean, I'm a student of customer success. I enjoy networking and meeting other people. And this is kind of where we do it. I just reach out and meet people. And I don't wait for my recs to open up. I really try and connect with other people and meet other people. And that way it opens up the pool of people that you're looking to bring into your organization. And, we look for the most talented people. So that's what we're trying to do at Kustomer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, everybody tuning in here and all of our panelists, we have a big job to do. And in that we're in positions in our companies or spots in our career that other folks maybe aspire to be at, or other people want to get into the industry. So yeah, I would challenge like the whole group and the whole community. Let's, do what we do best in customer success, which is, take the extra time to help a newcomer, answer that LinkedIn. One of the things that helped me get into this when I was asked to figure out customer success, I just went on LinkedIn and I cold outreached to a whole bunch of different customer success leaders. I think that's actually how I met you, Chad. Jocelyn, maybe that's how I met you as well.
No, Jill introduced us.
Jill, which was, I asked Jill to introduce me to some good customer success leaders, but it was through that shared knowledge that I was able to get ahead. So yeah, let's do that. We have a great community here, and let's lean into that.
Yeah, I think CS more than any other industry, I think we all are so open to connecting and talking and sharing our sort of what are we struggling with, what do we think we've done really well with, and sharing that across the industry. I'll just close with some of the best CSMs I've ever hired did not have any traditional CS background. So if it's a function that you're right, if it's a function that you're really interested in and you're on this call and thinking like, I don't really have the background, some of the best folks, best CSMs I know came in cold without that experience. So don't let that deter you.
No, God, no.
Yeah.
It didn't
I couldn't agree
exist when
more.
we started, so we just had to hire people that were curious enough to do it. So
yeah, exactly.
One of the things I've been doing is I've been helping people. I don't have time to meet with people right now because it's so insane, but I've been evaluating people's resumes, just answering questions and giving people advice and trying to do as much as I can to help others.
Just love it. This is a question right here that we're gonna also surface to the group. And this is from another good friend, Sarah Kiani. So for internal CS tools / systems, what advice would you have for proving ROI? Is the process the same as proving ROI to customers internally? So when we're lobbying for those tools to help our team out, how do we lobby internally? How do we prove the ROI for this stuff? How do you go about doing that?
I think 100% you use if maybe not exactly the same, a very similar methodology that you would use if you were looking at bringing in an external tool. You know, I've worked for lots of companies where it was far less casual and it wasn't necessarily a requirement, but I think that if nothing else, going through that exercise in your mind and sort of ticking those boxes and making sure that you can really prove the value of these internal tools. If nothing else, it's a great exercise because I think you can uncover some really interesting things going through that.
And so Kristina, for like brand new folks, when you're talking about proving the ROI, what are some like common strategies to do that?
Yeah, so I'll speak to a tool that I was able to bring in at Carta prior to my leaving, and it was what I call kind of a CS automation tool. So a tool, lots of folks use Salesforce and a combination of other tools. This tool in particular was sort of what Salesforce is to AEs, right? It's for CSMs, built by CSMs. It's intended to be a 360-degree view of everything you would want to know about your customer. And so we did go through a full, vendor selection and evaluation process. But if I were to sort of look at doing that now, and let's say Brandcast had that tool and I had to go through that exercise, one of the main things that I would look at is, in what way does this create leverage, right? Because at the end of the day, we all know that, we will start hiring, and CS has, I think, more than any other industry, continued to hire folks at this time. But I would absolutely look at ways to understand, is this giving my team leverage? Can they do more with less if we were to implement this tool or continue to use this tool, right? And if you take that away, what's the outcome, right? So it's a tools potentially for headcount situation, but I think just the leverage component is probably the most critical.
I love that. I'm gonna do, you know what? Let's try and do 3 more. So we'll kind of rapid fire through these because I know you folks have to run, but amazingly our people who joined in are staying strong. So this is a good sign here. But this is a great question right here. If you're a CSM, how would you recommend running a diagnostic test on your own skill set? So how do you do that self-evaluation for folks who want to get better? What's some advice there? That's a great question. I love
That's
that.
a really
Great
good question.
I think
I'll tell you
the answer too.
Yeah,
I think
I'll
asking
tell you one thing that one of my favorite execs in the world told me that I consider a good friend. She told me, she was talking about women in particular tend to be pretty hard on themselves and pretty self-critical. So sometimes the best way to really understand where your strengths and your weaknesses are is to ask somebody, ask your boss, ask an executive, ask somebody that maybe has a bit of distance, and be open to hearing what they have to say, right? Oftentimes it's other people that can tell us things that we wouldn't really self-identify.
Yeah, I love that. Chad?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's like in any role, it's not just in customer success. Go to other people, ask them for feedback, go to other departments. You just don't just rely on your manager. Get feedback from other people, and they'll usually give you good advice. Ask, and if you have a good relationship with your customer, ask your customers, how can I have done things differently? And I think that one of the things I think is the true strength of a customer success manager is that if they still keep in touch with their customers years later, even if either of them aren't at the same company. So my salespeople are reaching out to me and saying, hey, you know this person, this company, can you reach out to them? And people take my calls. And this is going all the way back to when Jocelyn and I were in Eloqua, you know, years ago. And it's so interesting to reconnect with them and talk with them. But those are some ways that you can assess yourself too.
Like that.
Yep. If you can ask your customer, that would be ideal. I will say though, part of that diagnosis is against expectations. So you probably do need to understand what is expected of you by your stakeholders. So if hopefully you have a definition of what your competencies that are expected of you in your role competencies, but if you don't, you can certainly ask those people that you work with more often what it is they expect you to be able to do and how you rate against that. But hopefully you've got some of that defined for you by your manager, or maybe you write your own role charter. Get feedback from your manager on whether that's what they expect you to be able to do, and then sort of grade yourself on it.
And one other thing to point out is that, you know, you might, if you like customer success, but you don't like necessarily the role that you're in, most, like so many different companies have like their customer success manager in one
very
company,
different, yeah,
different in another company. So
yep.
our company, they're very technical role, and there was one person, she's like, you know what, this isn't for me, and she's wanted to get into something that's more salesy. So that's the thing too. It's like, just like Kristina was saying, don't be too hard on yourself, because it might be the role and not you.
Yep.
Totally. All right, let's do one last one here. And I think this is a great question as well. And Jocelyn, you kind of tipped this off in one of your answers around every single renewal is going up to the CFO level.
Yep.
So the question is, how do you formalize that executive alignment program in your organization? How do you make sure that you're multi-threaded at that level? I think that's so important too.
I mean, if anybody has the silver bullet answer to that, I'll take it. I mean, I can tell you what we do, but does it work every time? It doesn't for sure. I mean, there's lots of times throughout a life cycle that you can take the opportunity to try and establish that and then maintain it. So in a perfect world, whatever executive you've met in a deal cycle, you create some sort of a steering committee type of relationship through the onboarding and some sort of executive relationship beyond it. But how often that happens and how often that executive stays the same is probably pretty rare. But we have we have a high value account program that has one of our executives assigned to everyone, and they're engaged in an account, and they work with the account management team to create that relationship and maintain it. And I expect my executives to have a quarterly contact, whether it be within a formal QBR or their own personal one, with those executives and alike. So you have to treat it like a relationship that's takes as much as investment as maybe your core one. So you have to have real buy-in to be able to do that. And it's important to match well, right? You need to be delivering value and getting some value exchange out of that. So you need to be thoughtful about it. But essentially, if ever you have an executive in anything, you want to make sure that you follow up and create that value and create the opportunity to ask that. Because most of them, if you ask, you can have some sort of a relationship. It can't be one that you define. The executive will probably choose what it will be, but your consciousness about it, your being prepared for that moment when you can create it, all of those things really matter. But I literally have never found the perfect program. I've run executive connection programs at every company I've been. It's never been perfect. It gets better every time. It's not easy.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've tried many different flavors, steering committee, exec committee. Yep. I think what tends to work the best, and I agree, Jocelyn, I don't have the magic bullet either. I was hoping you did. But I think what tends to work the best is really to build a bit of a framework. And you've got to get that buy-in early on. You cannot go and sort of introduce a customer to executive and not having briefed them, not having run it by them, not having them be prepared for that conversation, right? But I really strongly believe that every organization should have some version of an executive steering committee or executive sponsorship. Yep. It shouldn't just be me as the exec sponsor for every customer because I lead the CS team, right? Just like churn needs to be a company initiative. Yes, it's a CS metric that we're measured by specifically, but churn has to be a company problem that everybody comes together to solve. So does customer relationships. So I think just every exec's going to be slightly different. Less is more sometimes, but never put them in a position where they're not fully briefed and you don't have very clear expectations for what you're asking them to do.
I'll tell you, I'm finding it a little bit easier right now. And I can't explain
Absolutely.
it. I can't explain it, but it's a little bit easier right now to get those executive connects and relationships because they're having to stand up for the tools because they're getting signed so high. So now it's on me to make sure that gets sustained.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think to your earlier point, people are much more willing to see how they can be useful. And I think that extends to executive teams as well.
Yeah, I think so too.
So folks, thank you so much for joining our panel this evening. One more thing before we go, and Janan, I don't know if we can see the slide yet. All right, so what customer success meetup would be complete without an NPS survey? So Janan, I believe you're gonna post the NPS survey live here in a second. So folks, please answer that. And if you do, I don't know if we should be gaming our NPS surveys. I think that maybe does a little bit to the integrity of the data, but that's okay. You're going to get some Asana swag. So thank you very much to our sponsors. This doesn't happen without them. So yeah, round of applause for the panelists, and wherever you are in the world, thank you so much for joining us. You are what makes this customer success meetup so special. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.